Hi guys, Virtus Education here with the 8th video of the Unreal Development Kit beginner series, and in this video I'm going to be going over level lighting. So some of you are going to be questioning why we actually need to be building lighting, as some of you may think that UDK actually does it all for you. Everything looks all nice, sweet and dandy, because in here we can see we've got some nice sun, everything looks all realistic and sweet, but you know, this is just one dominant light. That's why everything looks all sweet and sexy pre-built, but there's a bunch of settings. We can add in manual lights, and if we work with something like a sort of interior level like this in my tutorial level which I've created here, you can see we're going to have to manually create point lights for the different emitters as we have here. If I press play, this is essentially how it's going to look if you don't add in your lights in interior levels. So I'm going to be splitting up lighting into two different videos, as it's a pretty large topic. The first one's just going to be initially going over how to add in very basic lights, and in the second one I'm going to be going over the different properties and adding in a skybox, which is a pretty cool topic. So let's get started. How do you add a light? There is two main ways of adding a light. So firstly, you can go ahead and right click and press add actor, and then light point or light dominant directional light. For now I'm just going to be working with a light point. This is essentially just a very basic light where a sort of area around it is emitted, and dominant directional light is just like a sun. But the second way is by going into the actor classes tab of the content browser and actually choosing one of the lights from this this rather large selection we have. But before I actually do that, I want to go over the sort of concept of lighting, sort of lighting texture maps which are created. As I said previously in one of my videos for the terrain, you have a dedicated sort of texture to the height map, which outlines the sort of detail or the height variation on that terrain. We have something similar for lighting in the form of a light map and a shadow map. So if I go ahead and go to my scene that we have so far, we actually have light maps and shadow maps for this, which I will show you in a second. So if I type in light map, I can actually find the light map dedicated to this level. This essentially outlines which areas need to be light. This is pretty simple for a light map. And a shadow map outlines which areas of the map, or you know, the different objects, need to have shadows on them. I'm not too sure about on the coloring for the light map, but for the shadow map, black essentially means there's going to be no light there, and a shadow should be casted, and white means there shouldn't necessarily be a shadow. As you can see here, if you look at the image itself, the white is a sort of BSP area, and there isn't really much that needs to be dark. So it's pretty simple. So let's go over some of the different types of lights we have in our scene. I'm not necessarily going to go over different properties as of yet. I'm just going to explain the basic concepts of what each of these are, and I'm going to put them into some very basic use. I'm probably going to also put the link to this level which I've created here in the description for you to use as a template. So let's go over to the lights tab in the actor classes and add in a dominant directional light. Well, actually no, I'm going to be using the example which I have here. I have a node dedicated to the sun. This is essentially what a dominant directional light is. It is a sun. If I go ahead and rotate this, you can see it directly manipulates the sun. We've got a bunch of different properties dedicated to the sun. For example, we have the brightness, we have the distance, and we can toggle it on and off, and so on and so forth. But not necessarily going to be working with the different properties as of just yet. Also, we have the point lights. But before I actually show you what that is, I want to go over pretty basic concepts of the three different variations. You usually have the normal variation, which is static, and we also have something called toggleable and movable. Toggleable means it can essentially be turned on and off via Kismet, Matinee, or Unreal Script, and movable essentially means it can be moved with Kismet, Unreal Script, or Matinee. It's pretty simple. So you know, we have those variations for spotlights, skylights, point lights, and so on. So what is a point light? I believe I went over this previously. This is essentially an omni light in the sense that it essentially emits light from everywhere around it, whereas a dominant directional light is all going to be in one direction, no pun intended, as to where the sun's actually facing. We also have something pretty similar to that called a spotlight, which I'll show you now. If I bring that in, the light goes in one direction. Just bring that up, and you can see it goes straight down, and that direction is actually indicated by a sort of little arrow beneath it, like so. So if I go ahead and rotate that, you'll see the arrow moves, and subsequently the light which it's emitting is moved too. You'd usually use a spotlight or something like this for where, you know, the light isn't actually physically able to go in that entire direction. If you have this, you can see it can actually go straight forwards, and go left, and go right, because there's nothing blocking it. Same with these. But let's say you had a floodlight where you've got sort of bevel. That bevel is going to be blocking it from going in a sort of set direction. It's only going to go pretty much straight forwards, or like a monitor or something like that. You know, that's where it sort of come into use. For a spotlight, you have a couple of unique properties, which I'm going to be going over now, which is the sort of cone. It's pretty much the only unique property to a spotlight, which is the cone. So let's go over that now. The cone is essentially the radius of where the light is actually going to be emitting from. If I set this cone to something like 5, it's going to be a bit like a torch or something like that, where it's a very small spotlight. Or if I set it to something like 15, it's going to be bigger, like a bigger torch. Set it to something like 50, it's going to be more like a floodlight or a really bright monitor, or something along those lines. Hopefully you should have a good sense of what a dominant directional light is, a point light, and a spotlight. So this is pretty much everything I wanted to go over in this video. Actually, no, there is one last thing, which is the building of my light maps and shadow maps. So if I go ahead and go into my game here and press play, you can see it says lighting needs to be built. Everything is pretty much pitch black, and I can't really see a thing. We need to actually update those light maps and shadow maps. To do this, just go ahead and go to build lighting, or press Control Shift and semicolon or whatever that key is, and we get this little dialogue here. Here we have a whole bunch of different properties for updating that light map and shadow map. Firstly, we have options to check what exactly we want to update, whether or not we want to update the BSP, the static meshes. If you turn off static meshes, you know, it won't generate the light map for the static meshes, and same with the BSP, but I'm going to leave that on for now. Only selected, so if you have a bunch of objects selected, it will only update those. Only current level, you won't necessarily need to worry about those. Building LOD textures, yeah, I advise to keep that on. We also have preview, the build quality, essentially the quality of the light map. If you turn it on to production, it's going to take longer to generate that light map because the quality is going to be increased, and you'll see that if you build preview and then production. Preview would generally be used if you just want a fast prototype, whereas production quality will be used for something like the final render, or whenever you want to get a screenshot, you make sure you build it on production, as there is a significant quality change. And we also have light mass, which is essentially UDK's advanced lighting tool, which allows for special things like global illumination, custom shadows, in the sense that you can change the colors, the intensity, and a whole bunch of other stuff, which I might go over later in the series. So let's go ahead, and with these settings selected, let's go ahead and build the lighting, and hopefully it should update, which you will actually see when I go into my level. It usually does take a while to build your lighting, especially if you have a bunch of different static meshes like I do now, because it's actually built on the CPU for some unknown reason, because Epic Games are really lame to me. But yeah, it's built on the CPU rather than the GPU, which is somewhat inefficient for rendering, especially graphic stuff, but they must have their reasoning. But you can see now the shadows and stuff like that has been updated. You can see a clean example of this if I actually look at the shadows where before it was pitch black, now it's nice and smooth and soft. You'll definitely see this in the second video of mine, the part 2 of the lighting, where I actually go into the properties of the lighting. Just go ahead and press play, and you can see everything's updated. It's all nice and real time, the error's gone, we can see what we're doing, and that's pretty much everything. So that's everything I want to go over. Thanks for watching, comment, like, and subscribe, and don't forget to tune into the second video where I go over the properties. So I will see you next